Today I'm going to share with you the 4 phases an athlete progressively can go through in his developmental stages between the ages of 16 and 40. Special shouts. So what does that look like? There is a lot of different, perceptions about an athlete and when he's developing. Physical training must be taken serious. And when you understand all of the ebbs and flows about physically training an athlete from the age of 16, I'm going to break down the brackets from 16 to 22 starting first and all of the things that it entails. But before I get started, I will introduce myself for everyone who's new to the page and has never come across us before. My name is Eric Bradley. I started in the medical field on a surgical team, and for well over a decade, I was a part of one of the top surgical teams in the country. I got the opportunity to segue my life into the world of training. And one of the endeavors that I embarked on to challenge my training was the VP for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had a serious back surgery and it destroyed his ability to walk. I took him under my wing and I brought him all the way back. And he was blown away. After being in the league for 15 years, he's the guy that brought Ray Lewis there. He knew immediately then, I got to get you into our franchise. So they flew me in and they wanted to really bring me in as a hire. And of course, I was building my brand. So long story short, I've written books on physiology and rehabilitation. And I've done that over the course of time. And my tagline has always been, the difference between me and what most people do is I train the elements of the human body that are invisible to the naked eye. And so now that you understand who I am and where I come from, I'm going to share with you exactly what the 4 stages of this human biology of an athlete between the ages of 16 and 22 must be. Now, number 1, when an athlete is 16 years old to 22, one of the things those guys embark in on is the ability to get on that weight training because their bodies never experienced it. And so for a male athlete, when they start hitting it, it gives them that dopamine rush that they've never ever had, and those endorphins take off like never before. So they get out of control. And when you want to compare that individual to someone, I go the likelihood of someone that reminds me of a Brad Pitt back in his younger day. If you pull up the movie Fight Club, when you're skinny and you're nerdy and you don't have, a muscle to stand on. I was a slim guy. When I started hitting, immediately my arms blew up, my shoulders blew up, my chest blew up. It was like a dopamine rush and it felt good. The thing is, that does not subside at the point. What happens is you're starting to pack on things and muscle that you don't really understand the responsibility of having muscle. So when you're an athlete between the ages of 16 and 22, what you'll find is they get that rush. They look for that. They search for that. And they want to be bigger and they want to be stronger. What male out here right now does not want to be bigger with muscle? Who does not want to have shredded abs, but strong in the waist, sturdy back? Everybody wants nice arms, and that's kind of what you'll find. We call stage 1 of that athlete, he's what we call a novice. Yeah, he wants that smoke. He's out there trying to acquire it. Now, if you're a trainer, you're going to want to hear this, because if you are working with that athlete, you're really his only voice of reckoning. So the more you know about physical training, the more he will be able to take in and learn from. I got a quick 45-second story. Now, when I was on the surgical team, I was working in orthopedics. Dr. Lyman Smith was the orthopedic surgeon for the North Carolina State Wolfpack, and they had a running back named T.A. McClendon. And T.A. was the leading rusher in the NCAA. At least he was in the ACC. He came in on a Friday morning. He was leading the league in rushing, or he was leading the conference in rushing. He came in, he's on the table. I'm like, hey, let's go. He always fumbled though. And I saw why, because he has small hands. Physiology's a trip. We wheel him in, do this arthroscopy. So that's a shaving of the patella tendon. Patella, which is the bone on the knee. All right. So we shave it, clean it off. No more knee pain. He gets out there. Boom. The next week, he's back on a Friday. Now, you don't go back to back with arthroscopies. That's not a thing. So, but what had happened, I'm going to tie it to phase 2, which we're about to get into. See what happens when an athlete, and the coach allows the athlete to start training a particular way with weights and not understanding what they are doing. Here's what people at level 1 and level 2, barbell training, dumbbell training, and what'll happen is you'll start to get more tweaks and you'll start to get more injuries. And that's exactly what was going on with my guy T.A. He was pounding on these legs that, Adonis kind of stuff. But what was coming of that is the ligaments were tightening up. The patella was being worn because of the squats and the deadlifts. And he started to become injury prone. He was constantly getting injured. And he was running guys over though. So we got it. Now, phase 2 is gluttony. Of an athlete's journey is gluttony. And why do we call it that? Because you get overwhelmed with trying to pack on. That's where he was. He was at phase 2. He had got a taste of that smoke and he wanted some more of that experience. So what does his coach tell him to do? Hey, don't lift weights anymore. Well, one of the things that happens in physiology is you understand how to utilize your body. Like we teach you how to not just bend your knees, but sit down in your stance and deliver the jab. And if you haven't watched that tutorial, you need to, because the reality is if you compensate what you don't know, what's going to happen is the results that are waiting, they're coming because everything you do has a receipt. And that receipt is going to be you paying the price. And so how do you prevent that? Number 2, these guys you can put them in the likes of an Anthony Joshua. So when you look at Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, either one of these guys, when you look at Anthony Joshua, you understood what the receipt would be. And always remember this, there is a receipt when you start pounding and packing on weight. So when you're doing that, you must understand that there's a residual effect. And if you don't understand what the residual effect is, and you're just looking in the mirror at your body and it looks so good, the girls like it, your ticket sales are going up. Every time you post a picture of yourself working out, you're getting 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 likes. It's hard to pull back on that. When you start running at cats and they start to kind of fall instead of try to tackle you or thump with you because of how you look, you have that intimidating X factor. That's a problem. It will come with a receipt. And so that's kind of where you saw if you take a look at Anthony Joshua, when he fought Ruiz and when he fought Klitschko, even though he won the fight, he was exhausted because he didn't understand how to recover. He didn't understand how to breathe. He didn't understand physiology, but he did understand packing on weight, getting stronger. In combat, it's not about packing on. It's about understanding how to utilize what you have. And when you're doing that, that is going to get you through. When I was growing up, I was a young, little, snotty-nosed kid. I destroyed guys twice my size, heights or width, because I understand mechanics. But then I realized I was mechanically inclined. Here's what you have to deal with when you packed on too much muscle: lactic acid. And then what happens is your muscles start to suck the oxygen straight out of the bloodstream. And then your body has nothing to oxygenate it. So all of those little details like the lactic acid and all of these individually offsetting things are triggering all of these alarms in the body. That's why you see athletes go like this. They don't know what's going on, and they just rather just get hit and knocked out, like Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor. He was just so exhausted. These are the repercussions. These are the receipts that you will experience. Now, from there, you will find these guys, they try to start stretching, but at the same time, it's too much density coming into the body while you're doing too little to gain elasticity. And if you don't get enough elasticity, it's like you're not even doing it. You're basically doing more harm than good, because there's no range for the ligaments to move. Why? Because I've written a book on rehabilitation. And if you don't understand that, over my decade, I probably did maybe, I don't know, over 1,000 arthroscopies and shoulder arthroscopies and ACLs, meniscus tears, all of these different things, the carpal tunnels that lead from physical underestimating of what you're doing. These athletes have to have a process if you want longevity of them. Now, phase 3 of this journey in the athlete's career is kind of like the years that he got to get serious, or he's going to be totally taken out of the game by himself. This is where he starts to take care of more things internally: ligament stretching and building bone density, gaining dexterity. External dexterity is not a thing. Dexterity happens over a course of time, but he's starting to do more things, because when in phase 2, you're getting introduced to those sports performance drinks, things that really ignite more of the same behavior, which does not benefit you in the long haul. It's only pushing you fast forward into that hole that you don't want to be in. So when you get to phase 3, now you're in a position where you really got to make some real changes. So you start focusing on this other stuff, and it's less on the outside because you've learned how to win without using that heavy duty muscle. Go back to Horace Gracie, skinny guy beating 300-pound men. It's because there's more to competing than weight. We look at bigger guys and we say, good, that was your fault. And we destroy them. And that's where you are now. You're in prime time, phase 3. And how do you get through this phase with flying colors? Stick to that process every single day. You focus on that, and you'll realize you're stronger than you've ever been. Following what I've heard, but there are people who can go deeper and deeper. And like I said before, the details will be there. Pay attention to them, because the athletes don't get a second body. Now we go into phase 4, 35 to 40. This is where you are focusing on psychological training. It's the mindset, it's mental. This is where you have started focusing on internally building dexterity, and internally focusing on ligaments and expansion and spacing and breathing and oxygenating the body so that you can dominate. Because now you're stronger than you've ever been in your entire life, and your IQ matches it. So these are the things that I said before that I specialized in the late 90s. In the early 2000s is I trained the elements of the human body that were invisible to the naked eye: perception, reaction, all of the things that build you up, motor skill. It's called posit science, brain fitness. These things separate your athlete. And this book highlights the breakdown of how you actually do this. And when you start training an athlete, there's a way that you go about doing it that does not break your athlete down, but it builds them up over the course of time. I look at that and I say, a lot of you understand what you're doing, but the reality is there's levels to it, because if you're working with the world-class athletes on this planet, see, whether you're physically training them or not, you're their advisor. And see, I know that you have an instinct to not be sold on anything you hear. You have to pay close attention, and you have to always have people who understand what the next step should be, because that matters with that athlete in his life. So I just want to make sure that you understand there's a lot more to the human body, because when you get older, you're focusing on inertia. You're focusing on what's going on in those ligaments. You feel what I'm saying? It's not about all of that flash, and you're learning how to utilize bands. You're not dealing with weight because you built the dexterity, and you realize that you can get stronger understanding how to work from the mind first. And so hopefully you understand the process. Now we'll be going deeper with the conversations on what are the actual exercises that you do, how do you construct a program, and how do you allow people to know that you are not really fond of how they're training their individual fighter or athlete. You have to make it very clear on what you would like to see them working on. And over the course of that conversation, what will happen is the person that's working it with them physically will understand that, okay, so this is what it looks like. Make sure you got experts in your corner, and continue to watch, because tomorrow we're going to go a lot deeper on what do you fuel that with. That kind of training, that kind of mentality, what goes into the body to reduce all of that inflammation that's going on when they're training and trapping those ligaments and impingements going on. See, it's just like phase 4. You're not working on the outside anymore. You're focusing on the internal, the 110 trillion mitochondria of the body, making up 10% of your body weight, which allows you at that point to start oxygenating and just becoming that animal in the ring. You remember how Manny Pacquiao was just like blazing through guys? Lance Armstrong was blazing through guys. See, that's a demonstration of what it looks like when you're at your peak. And so understand there's levels to this thing. And the more you know, the more you'll grow. And the more your athlete understand that you have their best interests at hand. Tomorrow, we're going deeper on the internal, what goes in, so the rest will go out. Good in, bad out. Hopefully this gave you some value. Thanks for watching. Special shouts out to my brothers in the School of Boxing, Champions University. Thank you guys for supporting the page, and we'll continue to give you food. Continue to follow us at masterboxingllc.com, and I'll see you in the winner's circle. This was 4 stages of developing an athlete from the ages of 16 to 40 by me, Eric A. Bradley. Peace.